Hey guys, and welcome to the Hoopla Halloween Chillerthon, where
We have such sights to show you.
my name is Jesse, and I'll be your host on this 31-day trek through the best and worst horror films that Hoopla Digital has to offer. Tonight's movies, yes, plural, are a sort of Clive Barker trilogy of Hellraiser, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, and Nightbreed. If you want to avoid spoilers and just want to know whether to watch these films, I say give Hellraiser a shot if you can handle some nasty gore effects and lots of other unpleasantness. Skip Hellraiser 2 unless you want more gore. And give Nightbreed a try if you want to see a decent attempt at making monsters heroes, especially compared to the recent remake of The Mummy and Universal's attempt at a dark universe. Of course, it is also a very R-rated attempt, so please keep that in mind. Also, Hoopla has the 2-hour director's cut of the film, so if you haven't seen Nightbreed in a long time, you may want to try this newer cut of the film. Want to know more? Let's dive into these movies. Hellraiser is Barker's 1987 directorial debut, and he wrote the script based on his novella The Hellbound Heart. It is a story about the Cotton family, and we start with Uncle Frank, who, having experienced all the pleasures that this world has to offer, buys a puzzle box in Morocco that promises to bring pleasures unknown to him.
What's your pleasure, Mr. Cotton?
He takes the box back to the attic of his house, gets oiled up and lights some candles to set the mood, and proceeds to solve the puzzle box, which opens up a portal that lets in the Cenobites. The Cenobites are
Explorers in the further regions of experience. Demons to some, angels to others.
These leather-clad monsters have brought chains, hooks, and a spinning wooden pillar covered in sharp objects with which they proceed to tear Frank apart. Their work finished, they reset the puzzle box, which makes almost all traces of their work disappear. I say almost because a tiny vestigial remainder of Frank's body remains under the floor of the attic. An indeterminate time later, Frank's brother Larry moves into Frank's house with his second wife, Julia. His daughter Kirsty, from a previous relationship, has also moved to the area with them, but lives in her own apartment. While moving furniture in, Larry gets a bad cut and goes looking for Julia to help. Julia happens to be in the attic, and Larry drips some of the thickest, most viscous fake blood I have ever seen onto the attic floorboards. It seeps under the floor where Frank's remains consume it, and Frank proceeds to rise up as a really gnarly looking ghoul of muscle, sinew, and lots of gooey fake blood. It's really quite the makeup job, and kudos to those who pulled it off. Julia winds up finding Frank the ghoul, and we discover Frank and Julia had an affair sometime in the past. Julia still desires Frank, and he wants his flesh back, so he convinces her to troll singles bars and bring unsuspecting men back to the attic where she kills them so Frank can consume their flesh. All is going well until Kirsty catches Julia bringing one of these guys to the house. Thinking Julia is cheating on her dad, Kirsty follows her and comes across Frank feeding on his latest victim. She narrowly escapes Frank and Julia with her life as well as the puzzle box. While running away, she faints and then wakes up in the hospital where she solves the puzzle box, opening the gateway to another dimension. First, she runs into a hilariously clunky yet somehow still disconcerting puppet that chases Kirsty down a corridor. Once she escapes that, the Cenobites come for her. Before they can do anything to her, she tells them Frank escaped them. She says she will take them to Frank so that they can take him instead of her. While they think that Frank escaping is impossible, they decide they want to hear him confess himself what he did, so they let her go. So now it's up to Kirsty to face down Frank and Julia in quite a gore-tastic finale that is pretty messed up, so be forewarned. Overall, Hellraiser is a solid horror film, especially from a first-time director. The gore and makeup effects are solid barring the goofy puppet, and the acting is serviceable, but definitely more soap opera caliber. I mean, Pinhead is a horror icon at this point, so if you want to see where his reign of terror started, here it is. Next up, we have Hellraiser 2, aka Hellbound, directed by Tony Randall. And no, not that Tony Randall. Clive Barker executive produced the film. Now remember how I just mentioned Pinhead, horror movie icon?
We'll tear your soul apart.
Do you want him and the other Cenobites completely demystified for you and depowered? Do you want to see special effects way too ambitious for the production's budget? Then by all means give this sequel a shot. First, we discover that Pinhead was a British military officer who opened the puzzle box known as the Lament configuration, which turned him into a Cenobite. Why do some people become Cenobites while others are merely torn asunder? The movie doesn't bother to answer this, which is disappointing to me. Next up, Kirsty returns. She has been taken to a psychiatric hospital after the events of the first movie, and though she and her boyfriend are the only survivors of those events, it's surprising that the police believe their story enough not to prosecute them for all the murders. However, this good fortune is short-lived because she is under the quote-unquote care of Dr. Chenard, who runs a normal-looking psychiatric hospital upstairs with a dungeon of horrors and malpractice in the basement. By some massive coincidence, Dr. Chenard is obsessed with the Lament configuration and has a collection of other puzzle boxes that look similar. Unfortunately, while more puzzle boxes appear later, they do not satisfactorily explore what these other boxes do, which is a big letdown. Chenard has an assistant, McCrae, who Kirsty tells her story to, and she begs McCrae to destroy the mattress that her stepmother Julia died upon. Chenard gets wind of this mattress and has it arranged to be brought to his own attic, where he allows one of his patients who can't stop scratching himself to have a straight razor. This plays out as grisly and as nasty as you'd think it would, and it brings Julia back out of the mattress. Julia convinces Chenard to bring more patients back to her to feed on, and when McCrae and Kirsty come to confront Chenard, Julia kills McCrae, and by doing so, completes her transformation. Julia then knocks Kirsty unconscious when Kirsty tries to attack her, and Chenard brings in Tiffany, a patient with a gift for solving puzzles. He uses her to solve the Lament configuration, but the Cenobites don't hurt Tiffany because, unlike when Kirsty solved it in the first movie,
It is not hands that call us. It is desire.
now Kirsty and Tiffany must face off against Julia and Chenard on the Cenobites' home turf. If you're still interested, I'll let you experience the rest of it for yourself. The movie was largely an unpleasant experience for me because it repeated so much from the first movie, demystified and depowered the Cenobites, making them less scary. It didn't have the budget to pull off the things they wanted to show, and it hinted at mysteries like the other boxes that are never explored in this film. The makeup effects are still good, and the acting is serviceable, yet soap opera again. If you just want some gore, feel free to give this one a try. If you want something more,
Your suffering will be legendary, even in hell.
Finally, we come to Nightbreed, which is based on Clive Barker's novel Cabal. Barker wrote and directed the film, which was, according to Barker, incorrectly marketed as a slasher film and was cut to ribbons from over 2 hours to 102 minutes. It flopped hard in theaters, but became a cult classic, and as I mentioned earlier, the 2-hour director's cut of the film is available to see on Hoopla Digital. It follows a young man named Aaron Boone, who dreams of a place called Midian, a city where monsters can find forgiveness and safe haven. Why would Boone want this? His psychiatrist, Decker, has convinced him that Boone is the mass serial killer we saw murdering a family at the beginning of the film, as well as many other families. Decker tells Boone to turn himself in, but Boone is hit by a truck and taken to a hospital where he meets Narcissa, who tells him how to get to Midian. Boone goes there and discovers an old cemetery as well as the creatures Kinski and Palaquin. Palaquin reveals that Boone is not a monster, which means
You're natural. That means you're meat.
Palaquin bites Boone, but Boone is able to escape. However, the police have surrounded the cemetery, and when Decker comes over to talk to Boone, he yells that Boone has a gun, a lie, and dives out of the way, and Boone goes down in a hail of bullets. However, Palaquin's bite made him one of the Nightbreed, so he is now undead and able to escape the morgue and get back to the cemetery. It turns out that Midian is a city under the cemetery where the monsters that inspired ancient and medieval folklore have found refuge from those who have almost completely killed them off. Boone is accepted by them after being touched by the blood of their deity Baphomet. This is all well and good, except Boone has a girlfriend named Lori who tracks him down to the cemetery and saves one of the monsters who she found dying in the sun. The monster turns out to be a little girl, and we realize that most of these quote-unquote monsters want to live in peace and just want a place to call home. I will say that they are surprisingly accommodating to Lori, though she does have some close calls. And it would have been nice to be given more reasons as to why she's not constantly in danger around the monsters. If the monsters aren't a danger to her, then Decker definitely is, because it turns out Decker was the serial killer the whole time. He has been killing families he has deemed monstrous and wants desperately to destroy the family of monsters in Midian. He uses Laurie as bait to get Boone out of hiding, but they're able to escape and get back to Laurie's hotel. However, Decker beat them there and slaughtered everyone in the building, and Boone is caught and arrested for the crime. He is locked in a cell, and the truth about monsters is revealed when the local doctor can't find Boone's pulse. Furious that there are monsters in his jurisdiction, the local police captain, along with Decker, leads a heavily armed posse to Midian, and only Boone can stop them. Nightbreed is quite the ambitious film, and it's strained hard against its budget. The makeup effects for most of the monsters are really good, and the acting is better overall than Hellraiser. This is especially surprising given that Decker is played by David Cronenberg, who I know primarily is a director of films like Scanners, The Fly, Dead Ringers, which is also on Hoopla Digital by the way, and History of Violence. It is a risk not to cast a professional actor in this role, but I think it worked well. I appreciated the attempt at world building in this film, but they definitely needed more money to pull it off. The monsters are well realized overall, and Barker does a good job of making them sympathetic without humanizing them. They are monsters after all. I recommend Nightbreed to those wanting a little more heart with their gore. Thank you for watching this review. If you haven't liked us on Facebook, please consider doing so to get the latest library updates as well as to see future videos in this series. Of course, feel free to like and share this video with your friends, and I look forward to hearing what you think of these movies in the comments. If you have any trouble using Hoopla Digital, please let us know so we can help you make the best use out of this service that you can access free 24/7 with your library card. Be sure to join me next time when I review the much more family-friendly film, Ghost Squad. See you then.